Hi, my name is Amelia Finley. We're going to be doing a quick hip mobility class. Maybe you only have a quick 10 minutes. You're going to need just a blanket today and maybe some blocks. So here we go, we'll get started. We're going to start in our nice comfy seated position, and you're going to start with a soft gaze or maybe eyes closed, and we're getting some big deep breaths, filling the entire belly up with air and then exhaling all of that air out. Filling up the entire canister as you breathe in, down into the pelvic floor, into the low back, into the space between the ribs, all around. And I want you to imagine that there's this teeny tiny version of you, this teeny tiny person. And we're gonna start at our toes, and that teeny tiny person is walking all the way up your foot. Maybe taking a second, walking around the ankle, continuing all the way up your shins, walking around the knee, just kind of noticing what feels sticky, what feels good. And then that teeny tiny person is walking all the way up the thighs, and then stopping at the pelvis. And this teeny tiny version of you is taking his or her time walking around the bowl of your pelvis. Crossing over the rounding of the hips. Maybe taking a second where the hip flexors are. And then continuing all the way back around, maybe stopping where the spine meets the pelvis. And then continuing all the way around, just exploring, just noticing. And then that teeny tiny person is gonna walk up your entire spine, taking a second at each vertebrae until that person gets to your rib cage. And that person's gonna go on the inside of your rib cage, and we're gonna come back to that deep breathing. And as you inhale, your lungs expand and are pressing this teeny tiny person against your rib cage. Not so much that they're squished, but just enough where it feels like a warm hug, something cozy. And then the teeny tiny person can continue moving up the rib cage. And still, as you inhale, we're compressing that teeny tiny person, and then exhaling, letting it go. Back, forth. Take a note of what that teeny tiny person noticed as we move through practice. Maybe fluttering those eyes open. And we'll get moving. So we're gonna start with those feet out in front of us. If you're seated up on a blanket, you might wanna come up off of it and move it out to the side. We're gonna plant those feet out right in front of us. And you're gonna start with the hands back behind you, and we're just dropping into some 90-90s. So knees are dropping over one side of your space and then the other, back, forth. Good. And then now we can drop those knees all the way over to one side. And we're gonna have a 90-degree angle in that back knee and a 90-degree angle in that front knee. And I want you to start by letting this back hip get really, really, really heavy. So we're letting that hip, that inside hip, that groin open up. Good. Now we're planting through this back knee, and we're doing our very best to lift that back foot while keeping ribs stacked over that pelvis. Maybe the foot lifts, maybe it doesn't, that's okay too. Working at that teeny tiny muscle that sits up in our glute medius here. Nice work. Now we're gonna plant that foot back down on the ground, and we're opening this knee up this time. Feel free to bring one hand out to the side, or maybe you're just opening up. Good. Nice. Now we can plant this knee back down on the ground, and we're gonna do our very best to lift the entirety of the back leg. It might be a little tricky, but we're gonna do our best to lift that leg and then lower it back down, almost like we're kind of doing a baby fire hydrant here. Good. You can even play with lifting this foot or lifting this leg and then swinging it all the way forward, and then lifting that leg back up and swinging it all the way back behind. Back forth here. Good. All right, now that we're back in our 90-90, you can take some windshield wipers back forth to open up those hips, get some movement back. And then we're gonna drop over into the other side. Again, 90-degree angle in that front knee, 90-degree angle in that back knee. And then we're gonna start just like we did on the other side, letting that back hip get really, really, really heavy. Good. Letting that inside hip groin area open up. Beautiful. Now we're gonna plant through this back knee, and we're lifting that back foot up and then lowering it back down, back forth, back forth. If you would like to play with lifting the foot and holding it, you can do that. Or we're lifting and dropping it back down. Good. Now we can plant this foot back down, and we'll play with opening up this knee. Nice. Now we're gonna drop back down, and we're gonna come back to those baby fire hydrants we did on the other side. So doing our best to lift the entirety of this back leg and then drop it back down. You might find that one side is a whole lot heavier than the other, and that's okay. Nice. As we progress, we're gonna do our best not to lean as much as we lift the leg, but this is challenging, so wherever you are, that works. Maybe you play a little bit with lifting that back leg and reaching the foot all the way forward, and then coming back around, back forth. Good. Now we can take a couple windshield wipers on either side here, opening up those hips, allowing some movement back. Good, then we're gonna rock and roll coming forward into our tabletop position. If you would like to grab a blanket up under your knees, you are more than welcome to do so. But we're starting down in our tabletop position. Our right leg is gonna kick out to the side, pushing your props out of the way. And you're just rocking back and forth on this inside thigh, letting everything open up. Then maybe you bring a bend into this knee, creating some hip circles. Good. Then we can step this foot all the way forward and let those hips get really, really, really heavy. So we're pressing the hips forward, squeezing the glutes, coming into that lizard pose. Good. Maybe you roll to the outside edge of that foot or even come up into a twist. Good. Then you can go ahead and walk these hands all the way back. You're bringing those toes up towards the sky, rocking back onto your heel, coming back into that half split. And then you can rock back forward and then back into that half split. Playing a little bit with what feels good or maybe what feels sticky. Nice. And we can go ahead and kick this foot back behind us, coming back into our tabletop. Now left leg's kicking out to the side, and we're rocking and rolling back and forth Opening up the inside thigh. And then when you're ready, you can bring a bend into that knee, creating some circles around that hip. Good. Now we can step this foot forward, coming into our lizard, allowing those hips to get really, really, really heavy here. Maybe even rolling onto the outside edge of that foot or coming up into a twist. Squeezing the glutes, pulling the hips closer towards the ground. Good. Now I can rock back into that half split and then play with coming in and out of the half split, rocking forward into the lizard and back into the half split. Nice. Good. Then we can kick this foot back behind us, coming back into our tabletop position. Those toes are coming together, knees are out wide, and we're pressing back into our child's pose, walking the fingertips forward. Getting some big, deep breaths here. Good, then you can pull yourself back up. We'll meet in our nice, comfy seated position. Thank you so much for practicing with me. Namaste.